Hello there everybody, welcome to another video by me, Mr. Drone. Yeah, I'm wearing a high-vis today. I'm due to put a hard hat on soon. Today I'm going for the tour of the Williamson Tunnels, built by Joseph Williamson a very long time ago in Liverpool, and nobody quite knows why. So I've booked this tour. It runs on a Wednesday morning and afternoon, I think, by the Friends of Williamson Tunnels. It is free, but you can leave a donation, which I will do, of course. But yeah, it's one I've been meaning to go on for a bit. It's going to be a good history tour, this, and I'm going to share a lot of history about the tunnels, about him, and what we can find out about it. Okay, so I think they're waiting for us, so we're going to get in there now. Have a nice walk round. I'll share as much as I can. I'm excited for this one. Let's get in there. We start our tour today outside what remains of Joseph Williamson's house. This is where he lived and died. The plaque symbolises this and also reads Joseph Williamson, the Mole of Edge Hill. We then take a short walk to what remains of the old road Paddington, where we find the entrance to the tunnel. Whilst we are shown down into the tunnel, our guide, Tom, tells us about the hard work of the Friends of Williamson Tunnels and the fight they put up to salvage the tunnels and obtain permission to excavate them. The Paddington Tunnels were rediscovered by the Friends of Williamson Tunnels team in 1999, whilst new student accommodation was being built alongside. The tunnels hadn't been seen since before World War II, and it wasn't known with any certainty whether they would still exist or had been destroyed. Thankfully, the tunnels were largely intact apart from some parts close to the surface, but they'd been backfilled with tons and tons of rubble. Just as they were described by previous generations of explorers, the Paddington Tunnels are a series of chambers stacked on top of each other. That's why we see reference to levels 2 and 3 and so on during the tour. One old account said that the tunnels were as deep as the building up on the surface was tall, and the shop building which used to be there was 4 stories tall. After many years, the Friends of Williamson Tunnels gained the necessary clearance to excavate the tunnels and have found them to be even deeper than that. Over 100 skips were filled with rubble and taken away. Where visitors used to touch the ceiling in level 3, they now peer down into something of an abyss, one which is extremely well constructed and completely intact. On level 2, there's an interesting area of bedrock underneath the steps that the Friends of Williamson Tunnels installed. It looks like a spot where Williamson's labourers were cutting out rectangular blocks to build walls with, but the cutting has stopped, apparently quite abruptly, with plenty of stone left. It makes us wonder whether the men were working in the Paddington Tunnels at the start of May 1840, when Joseph Williamson sadly passed away. The tunnelling appeared to stop forever that day. I wonder why. So, what do we know about Joseph Williamson? The Friends of Williamson Tunnels story about Joseph Williamson reads as follows. Material facts about Joseph Williamson's life are very hard to come by. It is only by piecing together the few there are, by making judgments on the common assertions about him, and by making logical deductions from physical evidence, that one can come up with a version of his life story. Here we have tried to present an account which avoids the all too frequent exaggerations and cliches, and hope that the result is as close to the truth as possible. Joseph Williamson was born on the 10th of March 1769. His place of birth is not definitely proven, but is widely believed to be Warrington. There is virtually no information on his early years, bar the claim that he left his family home aged 11 and went to Liverpool to seek employment. If he did leave his family as a child, that would suggest the family was not wealthy. Arriving in Liverpool in 1780, he would have been greeted by a city that was noisy and busy, its landscape dominated by windmills and chimneys, animals being herded in some streets, grand merchants and houses in others. Much commercial activity would have been centred on the docks, and one of the growing activities there would have been the importing of tobacco. Here we see an illustration of Liverpool docks, where Williamson's trade was focused. This picture is courtesy of Liverpool City Libraries. The young Williamson would have had little difficulty finding a job in such a burgeoning town and at some point he began employment with the tobacco and snuff firm of Richard Tate. Tate's main office was based in Parr Street, adjacent to Wolstenholme Square, near the city centre. It was a family business, and when Patriarch Richard Tate died in 1787, the reins were passed to his son, Thomas Tate. The business was successful. It enjoyed the spoils reaped by many Liverpool firms as the city's greatest years dawned in the early 1800s. It would appear that by this time, Williamson was rising through the ranks of the company, perhaps being promoted from runner to clerk, and so on. As a sideline, Williamson set up a merchant in partnership with Mr. Joseph Lee, while still working for Tate a few doors away. He must have done well because the family gave its blessing to Joseph to marry Elizabeth Tate, Thomas's sister. In 1802, Elizabeth Tate, amateur artist, became Mrs. Elizabeth Williamson in a ceremony held at the family church, St. Thomas's, near the waterfront. Here is an artist's drawing of Elizabeth Tate. Here is an artist's drawing of Joseph Williamson at around age 50. Just a year later, Williamson bought the tobacco business from Thomas Tate and incorporated the Lee and Williamson Merchants Company into Tate's. He continued to run it for many years. One suspects that the success of the business continued under Williamson's auspices. Here is an early view of the sparsely developed Smithdown Lane, again courtesy of Liverpool City Libraries. It is important to understand that in the early 1800s, Edge Hill was largely undeveloped, although the layout of Mason Street had been in place for some time. Mr. Edward Mason, after whom the street would be named, had his mansion on one corner of the Len narrow pathway. This and a small number of houses stood on a breezy outcrop, offering an unobscured view down to the River Mersey. Significantly, the sandstone terrain had previously been quarried, and several abandoned pits are marked on the contemporary maps. Around 1805, Mr. and Mrs. Williamson moved into one of the Mason Street houses, a house which was to be their home for the rest of their lives. Williamson quickly set about building more properties. These houses were built with cellars, as most houses were at the time. However, it appears that in designing these properties, Williamson decided that they should follow the fashion for having large gardens and orchards behind them. Here is a drawing showing Mason Street in the early 1800s. 1806, with several houses under construction at once and the arches taking shape behind them, Williamson would have been employing a large gang of men. At this time, many healthy men of Liverpool would have been among the British troops battling against France as Napoleon Bonaparte sought to conquer Europe. However, there was labour aplenty available to him as Liverpool began her rapid expansion, fuelled by immigration, in turn fuelled by the success of her port. At the back of each house was a small amount of space, but then the sandstone bedrock dropped about 20 feet down to the same level as Smithdown Lane. To accommodate the gardens, Williamson had his men build brick arches that they could be extended onto. In this way, the gardens and orchards were laid out, and most significantly, the first outwardly visible part of the tunnels had been put in place. Here is a naive painting, but very informative, of an 1800s view of the gardens behind Mason Street. This image is once again courtesy of Liverpool City Libraries. The manner in which matters developed from this point on is the subject of much Chinese whispering and even more speculation. A choice has to be made here without the benefit of any significant documentary evidence. Most casual and many serious observers today maintain that Williamson had his men continue digging, building and tunnelling, perhaps making use of the old quarries on the site as a response to the poverty which surrounded his neighbourhood. Certainly, the construction stepped up a gear and a labyrinth began to take shape. But was it genuinely the product of philanthropy on Williamson's part? The suggestion that it was stems largely from the old writings of James Stonehouse and Charles Hand. Yet careful reading of these, Stonehouse's near contemporary account especially reveals that Williamson was very secretive about his tunnels, never stating their purpose except for a few reported conversations in which he replied to questions about their nature by pointing out that he was employing more men than other people did. His comments may have been observation rather than explanation, and are not in themselves enough to prove the philanthropy theory. Indeed, the absence of any categorical explanation of the tunnels by their mastermind leads inevitably to speculation about alternatives. These include the suggestion that the Williamsons subscribed to an extremist religious sect which claimed that the world faced Armageddon several years hence. Williamson therefore built the tunnels as a place into which he and his fellow believers could escape to avoid the catastrophe and emerge later to build a new city. Fanciful though this theory appears, there are factors which lend it some credence. At the time, Liverpool was a hotbed of religious extremism, with any number of sects propounding such theories. Secondly, it is known that Williamson was a religious man, a regular member of the congregation of St. Thomas's, the church where he married. Thirdly, as stated above, he was very secretive about the tunnels, only allowing certain people to see inside the hidden part of them. Finally, equipped with this theory today, one cannot help but notice the numerous Gothic, chapel-like features that have survived in many parts of the tunnels. None of this is to discount any of the other theories about the tunnel's construction, nor that the simple philanthropy theory may in fact be the sole and true reason for the tunnels. We simply don't know. In any case, the expansion of the labyrinth continued. By 1816, the Napoleonic Wars were effectively over, soldiers returned to their hometowns and thousands began looking for work. Just as important, the home industries which supported the war effort suddenly had a lot less to do. Unemployment was rife and social support was only available on a scarce and informal basis. Williamson had retired and sold the tobacco firm by now. It would appear that from this point on, almost all his attention was given over to expanding the tunnels, whatever the reason may be. It is easy to underestimate the severity of the recession that hit Liverpool at the time. Jobless men far outweighed the vacancies around the port, and those who had returned from war, permanently injured, stood little chance other than to try their luck with the man who locals were now referring to as the King of Edge Hill. Here is an image of Smithdown Lane around 1858, some of the tunnels supporting gardens behind Williamson's houses. This image is also courtesy of Liverpool City Libraries. Williamson kept taking more and more men on. No doubt others left through age, through finding a better job. Perhaps some were killed in the dangerous conditions, dark, dusty, noisy, cold in winter and hot in summer. The rock men worked with picks, shovels and barrows, while the carpenters used axes and saws to build formers for the bricklayers to lay arches on. Underground, the men worked by candlelight. Certainly some would have been injured, but they may have been kept on. There would always have been a need for storemen, counters, men to hand out the food and wages. Williamson would often have his workers perform apparently pointless duties. It is said that he would get a man to move a pile of rocks from one place to another and then get him to move them back again. In the parts of the tunnels accessible today, there is evidence of tunnels being built and bricked up again, alongside fine arches that lead nowhere. This supports the idea of keeping men busy simply to keep them in a job, but may equally lend mystery in the sense of keeping certain parts of the labyrinth secret. Perhaps Williamson was also deriving satisfaction from his growing domain, the power it gave him. The streets had become fully occupied, with all the residents vetted by himself. The King of Edge Hill was now in control of his own kingdom. In 1822, Williamson's wife Elizabeth died, aged 56. There is supposition, and it makes some sense, that thereafter Williamson sought solace by turning his attentions even more vehemently to the labyrinth. Some say that after Elizabeth's death he rarely ventured above ground, but this is unlikely given his active property interests. By 1830, the railways had arrived, and they were right on Williamson's doorstep. There is little doubt that he would have taken himself the few hundred yards up the road to witness the inaugural journey of the pioneering Liverpool to Manchester Railway. Perhaps he was one of the many private shareholders in what was a highly speculative and controversial project. Certainly, Williamson would have noted the colossal movement of sandstone as cuttings and tunnels were dug, not least when, a few years later, the main tunnel to Lime Street was dug right under his own street. Many of Williamson's men, of course, became highly skilled as they served their informal apprenticeships on his tunnels. It is highly likely that at least some of them were recruited by the rail engineers from the 1830s onwards. Williamson died, aged 71, on the 1st of May 1840, by chance on what would become International Workers' Day. The cause of death was given as water on the chest, known today as pleural effusion. 70 was a significant age at that time, and his life was no doubt lengthened by his active lifestyle. The tunnelling stopped immediately and was never continued. Williamson was buried with the remains of his wife and her family in the Tate family crypt in the cemetery of St Thomas's Church, where they had married 38 years earlier. He had remained steadfastly loyal to the church throughout his time in Liverpool. St Thomas's was demolished years later, and subsequent changes to the Croydon Road layout saw many of the graves moved elsewhere. It was not necessary to move the rest, and so several dozen of the tightly packed and very basic graves were left in place. Over the years the site changed, fenced off land, a car park, and the existence of the graves was forgotten, then became the subject of doubt. However, research showed nothing about the remaining graves being removed. In 2005, as the Liverpool One shopping centre was being built on the site, the Friends of Williamson Tunnels lobbied hard for a formal archaeological dig to take place to try and locate the long-lost Williamson Tate grave. In October 2006, during the third and final dig, with the allotted time almost expired, they found it. It was exposed for a couple of hours, allowing the archaeologists to record details and Friends of Williamson Tunnels to take photos, but it was then covered up again. A couple of years later, a garden was built on the plot with a plaque about Williamson, his remains covered over again, but still resting at peace underneath today. Okay, and there we go. That was my video of the Williamson Tunnels and my story. Well, the story of Joseph Williamson and his history of what they know of it, shared from the Friends of Williamson Tunnels website. So I do have to give a big mention to the Friends of Williamson Tunnels website. I'll talk about them a bit in the end, but to finish this video, you'll see I'm in a totally different location now. I am on the corner of Paradise Street in Liverpool city centre, and I am at the site of the St Thomas Church Memorial Garden. It's right on the corner in a busy part of town, to be honest, but this is where you'll see the plaque behind me and the liver bird there. So yes, this is the memorial site of the St Thomas Church, and to all that were buried at that church, including Joseph Williamson himself, Richard Tate and their family members. So yeah, I thought this was a good place to finish this video. So Joseph Williamson and the tunnels, the Williamson Tunnels, why were they built? Was it because of the alleged potential threat of Armageddon that he feared? Was it because he just wanted to keep men in work, or was it simply a case of mining for the sandstone? Who knows? Will we ever know? I don't know. The Friends of Williamson Tunnels will continue to do their best to shed more light on it, find out more facts for us, but I think people just need to go and visit. Definitely go and visit. So I will share the link to the website of the Friends of Williamson Tunnels. It is free. The tours are free. You drop them an email. You can go on, follow the book in, go and visit, have a look for yourself. It's really interesting, a really great tour. You can have a look for yourself and cast your own assumptions on why he built them, what they're doing there. But it's very interesting. Like I say, the Friends of Williamson Tunnels, they were great. The tour guides were fantastic. And they work off donations, so if you do go and you can donate anything, or even if you can't make it there but you want to jump to their website there and place a donation, please do so, because like I say, it's a really good cause and a great bit of history, Liverpool history. But yes, we will finish the tour there. If you wanted to come and see this site, as I said, it's at the corner of Paradise Street, right by Liverpool One, so you can just come and have a look at the plaques. But guys, other than that, I really hope you enjoyed that video. I really enjoyed making this one. There's plenty more like this to come. Please like, share, subscribe. Keep watching for more videos to come. As I said, I've got lots and lots of more tours planned, so lots like this coming your way, as well as all the other stuff I do. Thank you very much. Please hit that button, like, share, subscribe. Thank you. Bye now.